What's up, Digital fam? It's your boy Drew. Happy Sunday again. Welcome to the L's, aka Lessons Learned. We're back, episode 27, season 2. Crazy. We amazing stories from all the episodes that we shot last year. So shout out to everyone that's tuned in. We got more episodes lined up for you guys. But before I start, I just want to say thank you for tuning in, supporting the Digital family, and more to come. But I have a special guest today. My homegirl, my good friend of mine, Sammye Scott. What's up? Happy Sunday.
What's going on? Happy Sunday. How are you?
Good. I just want to always do like a mental health check-in because I think that's the most important thing aside from everything else. How are you? How's the family? Um, and how's everything over in Atlanta?
Family's good. Family's good. I saw them for Christmas. Thank you for asking. And then as far as Atlanta, Atlanta is wide open. Literally wide open. So, no slowing down over here. I guess I don't know if that's really a bad thing or a good thing, but new year, just trying to get in the swing of things,
Right.
not overwhelm myself and take things day by day, because I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of times we forget we're humans and it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah. Lessons learned in that. We'll tap into that in a second. But for context, so shout out to JR who connected us. JR
Shout out
McKee.
to my big bro JR.
JR is the GOAT. He is also the Clubhouse GOAT. He is
Like,
the he is the webinar
I'm
GOAT.
like, I see you, JR. Oh my gosh, he's going crazy on Clubhouse. I love it though.
I love it.
He has a lot of knowledge. He's very smart. So
yeah, I consider JR one of my mentors, like just as just a friend, because I've learned so much from him, and he's a funny guy. So he always
very funny.
Very great sense of humor. But shout out to JR. So you spoke at our Music Career Summit this past summer. So thank you so much for that A&R conversation. I just remember that being a 7-hour event. Definitely not doing that for 7 hours. We're going to split up to 2 events, but thank you. And shout out to you
for having me.
No, for sure. Like y'all crushed it with that conversation. And then you're part of our first mentor program. Yeah, you got to you're part of the community. You're part of the family now. I mean,
I do feel like I am. I feel like
now you're doing the podcast. Yeah. So I said like now I'm saying like now you're doing the podcast. So it's like
oh yeah, exactly. Now I feel like I've done everything. Yes, you and your team are amazing though. Like so welcoming, so like just great communicators, everything. I love it.
Appreciate you. Just for the room, obviously like people just may not necessarily know who you are, but what is your like day-to-day, what is your role, and then we'll dive into your story.
Okay, so my role, my position is director of A&R for Atlantic Records. What that means, it means a plethora of things.
Which we'll go into.
It is from finding talent, seeking talent, finding producers, finding songwriters, putting them in a room together, not just throwing anyone and everyone in the room together, but making it make sense for the people that you're putting in the room together and hoping that they complement each other in various elements, whether it be personality, creative wise, anything, and making sure that, that they'll mesh with the artist. And once we get that, then either the artists are going to cut the record or they're actually in the session. And then, okay, cool, we're done with the project and we have to start handling the business on it. And that's when we're calling the creatives teams and coming to an agreement on their fees and their terms. Then we're compiling all that together and sending it to admin and reaching out to the lawyers and getting it mixed, getting it mastered, trying to collect all the files. It's so much. It's so many different elements to be in an A&R outside of just finding talent and being in a studio, which I think a lot of people think it is. But I'm like, that's not even a fraction of it.
I love that you just demystified that idea. And I also love that you only just gave of less than a tenth of what you do. You do a lot. This is the case because you're right now you're in the studio, so the fact that you're working says a lot about about you. You work really hard, and I really appreciate you tuning in and being part of this podcast convo. Um, but for the room, like, before you became the director of A&R over at Atlantic, but how did you, where did your start for music begin? Was it like, where did your love for music really begin? Was it like a project? Was it an artist? Was it people playing music in your household? Where did that start? Like, where did you grow up?
So I'm from Chattanooga, Tennessee. Um, and my mom loved music, so she always played music. She played everything from Biggie and Tupac to Journey. So I got a
That's like,
wide range. Yeah, I know, two total opposite sides of the spectrum, but I appreciate her for it because it broadened my diversity within what I was listening
Mhm.
to as well. So
Right.
um, I just I really just fell in love with music, and then as I got older, I started understanding that music could help me get through anything that I was going through. So if I'm happy, I can play music and make me feel some sort of way. If I'm sad, if I'm depressed, if I'm want to be spontaneous, whatever emotion or feeling I was going through, I felt like music could accommodate that. And it's like, it's my peace. As much music as I listen to all day long for work, I don't consider it work because I love it, but essentially for work, I do the same thing in my house. As soon as I get in my house, I turn on my speaker. As soon as I get in the car, I
Mm.
have to start playing music before I drive off. So it's literally just like my life and my safe place, I guess, to say.
I love that you said that. We talk about like just kind of like music being your safe space, like your therapy. Me just listening to music as a fan just helps because like it calms all those ideas down, those anxiousness, those moments. Like, whew, I could actually like think clearly and see see things. And it's like just listening to good music. So super important. So for me, like my first like special project was Boys and Man 2. I remember it was like I was in fifth grade, and then my mom just played it on a road trip to Florida. I just kept on hearing these harmonies and these guys like just like beat in sync. I was like dude, like who are these guys? Like songs like Water Runs Dry, and I was like, man, I love how they're like creating this music. I didn't know what it was. It was just, and I found out it was R&B and who they were. But do you remember that first project that really like resonated with you? Because I think everyone has that first project. People are different, but was there anything that growing up that you're like, oh, this is the project that really like made me love music?
Yeah, I mean, I can say um definitely. So it's kind of two parts to that. So I remember when I first started buying CDs and I bought NSYNC and Britney Spears and Backstreet Boys and the Rugrats
Yeah.
soundtrack. Like I remember that like that was yesterday. But then I feel like the first project that actually like moved me when I was like, oh wow, this is music was it was Usher's album. I can't
Confessions.
think of, no, it was before Confessions. It was that album.
Yeah, the album. Okay. Yeah, no, Usher obviously is a classic. But yeah, it's one of those things. And remember, this is a time where CDs were prominent. So for the new folks that just listen to music through streaming,
That just put so much age on me. I feel so old now.
I was like, um, but yeah, we bought CDs. We went to like either it was Best Buy, it was like
Mhm.
Tower, Virgin. Uh,
Mhm.
like I remember, and it was dope because like you literally had like your CD racks, and you're just like, oh yeah, just gonna
Yep.
put CD there. Mind you, this is more advanced than the cassette tapes. Like you know, So I remember that. So like growing up, you talked about this Usher project, and then how did that kind of evolve? Like you start listening to that music, and like were you influenced by your friends? Was it like the people around you? Did you have artist friends? Like how did you start like kind of developing your ear for like love for music? Did you go to a show? Um, talk about your experiences
Yeah,
like in high school.
but I've been going to concerts since I could before I could remember. Like I went to Janet Jackson's concert, the Velvet Rope tour. I remember that, and then I went to the Spice Girls concert. So I love the
Okay.
Spice Girls. Love
Yes.
the Spice Girls. But yeah, so that's really when I got into like on the forefront, and I was so young then, but like this is like something I love. Like I to this day, like I love concerts. That's probably one of the biggest things for me right
Same.
now. The fact that I'm like, I can't go to any concerts because I will go to a concert every week if I can. I just like to see artists live and their environment and really connect. I think it's a different feeling. Like it's a feeling when you're listening in the car or on a CD player or wherever, however you're listening, but it's definitely a different type of connection when you're front and center with the artist.
Yeah.
So I would say that was like a real big interest of mine. Um, and then like when I got in high school, my friends and I would just ride around and listen to music and go to different places and check out live bands and things like that. Like even in high school, like my music selection was so like broad. Like I would listen to Sublime,
Wow.
but also be listening to Gucci Man. So yeah, Sublime was like one of my favorite bands in high school. So it's crazy. It's just
Uh,
so random. I'm so all over the place when it comes to music. I listen to everything.
well, I love that. I mean, you talked about your mom listening to like Biggie and Pac and then Journey. So, I think it's dope that you have that wide range. I think the fact that you just love music and no one should ever feel like, oh, and you love Spice Girls too. Like, there's Usher. I mean, that's what music is about. Like, it's all about moods. You can listen to music in
Hmm.
different spaces of your life. That's what's
Hmm.
really cool about it. So for you, just real quick, you talked about Spice Girls in the concert. Do you remember what that felt like? That experience was like when you were there? You know,
Yeah, absolutely. There's like an out of body experience, like seeing them on stage live because I had their CD, obviously. I had the movie that I used to watch every single day. So to actually be like live, and by the way, my grandmother took me to the Spice Girl concert, which was even crazier. Yes, she took me
your
everywhere I
grandma.
wanted to go. Yep, she took
Shout
me
out to
to the Janet
grandma.
Jackson. She took me to the Janet Jackson concert as
Grandma's
well.
lit.
So yep, she's cool as shit. But yeah, it was like mind blowing. Like to see them really like the flames and them really just going crazy dancing on the stage and seeing them just in person was crazy to me. Like I remember like it was yesterday, literally. And I've been to like 5,000 concerts, if not more. So
I love that. I think everyone kind of remembers their first concert, so it's those are always like the most memorable. And shout out to grandma for bringing you
shout out
everywhere.
to her.
Um, so fast forward, like in high school, you know, are you still in Chattanooga, Tennessee? Like, are you still in Tennessee during that time? What was like the music scene in the town? Obviously, like Memphis is like I don't know where Memphis is relative to Chattanooga, but obviously Memphis has a big music scene. But was there like any local artists that you supported? Like, what was that experience like?
Yeah, I was in Chattanooga. I went to Notre Dame High School, but there was there wasn't an artist that I particularly supported, but my friends and I just loved music. So we would go to, we would skip school and go to this coffee shop downtown, and
Nice.
they would have live bands there. It's called Stone Cup. They would have live bands there, and we would go check them out or whatever. So, and I think I don't know what else it was. And then like music videos were super prominent back then. So I would
Hmm.
just sit there and watch music videos all day long. Um, and that's kind of the forefront of where I realized I wanted to be in the music industry, but I didn't know what I wanted to do because I also wanted to be a lawyer and go to Harvard. So it was like, how am I gonna make this work? I gotta figure this out. But I definitely wanted to do music, and yeah, I would say that's where that segue happened.
Gotcha. So you talked about the music videos being inspiration for you. You talked about going to downtown to like check out the live bands. Um, what's kind of like that pivot to like really your interest? Did you decide to like want to obviously be a lawyer, or what was that kind of like crossroad between being a lawyer and pursuing music as a profession?
So I moved to Atlanta to go to college, went to Spelman College. Initially, when I got to college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like I said, I wanted to be a lawyer, but I also wanted to be in music, but I wasn't sure what exactly that looked like on the music side. And I didn't want to be an entertainment lawyer. I wanted to be corporate. So it was like, damn, like, you want to be in music, then why don't you just be an entertainment lawyer? Everyone kept saying that. I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. But I did want to like be privy in how to do contracts. So I was a history major with the track and pre-law.
Wow.
Yeah, and history, oh my gosh, it was so bad. I only did history because my grandfather was like, you need to do something like that stands out. Like, when you're applying to law school, just like when you're applying anywhere else, you're basically a piece of paper. Like, what's making you stand out from everyone else that's applying for the same position? So that's
Right.
why I did history, but I didn't realize history was so much, like, so many dates and having to remember all this stuff. I was like, hell no, this is not for me. I was failing. So I said, I got to change my major. What is something that's more interesting than this? And I'm like, I'm a people person. So that's why I kind of shifted to psychology and became psychology with the track and pre-law. And I also felt like I could apply that to anything, whether I do go to law school or whether I go, I'm in the music or whatever field I decide to work in. I knew I didn't want to do clinical, but I knew it could still apply to everyday life in my career.
Right. You talked about a really important lesson learned where you can be self-aware and you pivot. Like, a lot of folks, especially a lot of young kids that are studying a particular subject, don't feel discouraged if you don't love it. Like, you can pivot and it's okay.
Not only did I not love it, but I was failing. I had no choice but to take. I was like, oh, this isn't gonna work. I was dreading
This
going
ain't
to class.
it.
Yeah, this ain't it. This ain't it.
No, it's super important. So where was that kind of entry point? You talked about, being able to like learn psychology and being in Atlanta, obviously this is like a very big music culture, big music scene. What was that like initial kind of experience in music? Did you go to a studio or how did you get your initial foot in the door?
Actually, it's so crazy. One of my best friends from college, her name's Victoria. She actually started dating this guy who worked in the music industry, and he was trying to hire
Mm,
her, but she's like a classically trained dancer, so that wasn't something she was interested in. But she was like, "Hey, my friend Sammye is like, she loves stuff like this." So, he owned a management company, so I started working for him. I was his assistant, and went to the studio with him. I learned how to put together sessions, understood like how to put together sessions, just studio etiquette, just like the basic fundamentals. I met a lot of different key influencers in Atlanta at the time. Back when I met Jazzy Faye. So I was probably like
wow.
19. Yeah, it was crazy. And that's like my OG, like that's like my big brother now. I met so many different people though, and I feel like that helped, build the core of my understanding of how sessions and music industry, music business even worked. Because I had, I don't know, like I've never like really been in the studio. You know what you see on TV or you know what you hear, but to actually
Mhm.
be a part of it, that was a crazy experience. And like I said, I learned so much. But I had to stop for a little while because I was trying to graduate, which is
So this was
probably
happening
why it
while you're
took me
at
like,
school.
yeah, this is why I was in school, which is probably why it took me like 5 years. But it's okay though. Everyone has their own everyone has their own path.
Wha-
But
I mean, my thing is like, who decided to make college 4 years? I'm just like, what? We
yeah,
we all we
exactly.
all learn differently. I graduated in 4.5, so I was like, I don't care. As long as I
Right.
graduate.
Facts.
Um,
Facts.
but talk about those initial experiences because I know a lot of folks, um, you know, they may have an idea of what they want, but sometimes it's about just getting experience. And you know,
Yeah, more than anything. And I'm my family is so like uh school driven, like you gotta graduate from high school, you gotta graduate from college. If go get your master's. If you don't, hey, it's not all in. I mean, all else are felt, but they're like very big on education.
mhm,
So, like with me, even with my family and accepting music, no one understood that because no one like they're like the music industry. What's the music industry? Like
right.
that's not real business or anything like that. But I say all that to say, like, while I was in college, even though my major had nothing to do with music, those
Mhm,
key experiences and being able to just sit in on sessions and sit around people with so much knowledge was more than I probably could have learned from a book. And
right.
it's great. Don't get me even like what I always use this example as well. Even with me being a psychology major, obviously I didn't go get my master's to do clinical, but I was in undergrad with psychology, and I'm going to learn the fundamentals. So I'm going to learn the basics. I'm going to learn certain key terms, certain things that it's like, okay, if someone brings that up, I know what they're talking about, but nothing that I could really apply to my career. So I feel like it's the same thing, like with music. Like, you can read books as you should, because there's certain things that the average person's mind in music business is not going to think to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll learn those key parts, but there's nothing like experience, because that's when you do something you're not supposed to do, and it's like, shit, okay, lesson learned, understand how that works. But that's not going to be something that they can teach you in a book.
Yeah, no, 100%. And, for a lot of folks, that may not necessarily have or like have a music job, but you can get it through, working on passion projects with your friends, pay it through experience in your cases. So you can speak to those things. There are young people, often not want to be an A&R, but unless you've actually done it or intern or become an apprentice, you may not necessarily want to do it.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
you
Because
know,
people don't understand like the severity of what that is. Like, I think a lot of people see the cool parts of it, like, oh, they're in the club, they get to hang out with this artist or that artist. And it's like, no, you're really like a manager too. So it's way more than the fun and games that people see. That's an element of it, but it's so much work. It's so tedious. It's so consuming. I wouldn't change it for the world, because I love what I do. But for someone who doesn't have that passion behind it, I wouldn't suggest just doing it because you think it's cool.
yeah, and I just want to reiterate that it's just like the optics, right? People traveling in jets and this, that, and the third. Like, that's like part of the mystique, but there's a lot of hard work. There's a
A
reason
lot.
why I got here, from my artists. And it's sometimes like people don't recognize, like, for example, you're in the studio, like, you right now, and then you might be there till like 4 a.m. with the artist. Who knows? Like, there's so many things, and I can only imagine. But um, during this time, you talk about your family and their kind of like importance of just academia. Like, how was that approach for you? Because you loved music, and just for the folks that may not necessarily get that initial support, like, what was your approach to kind of just like, hey, I love this, I'm gonna do this, even though like your family, obviously had a certain viewpoint on music.
Well, it was kind of like, when my mind is set towards something and I knew this was my passion, it's like, I'm going to make it work. I have no choice but to make it work. So I went to school, like, and I can't even say school was like a fallback plan, because it wasn't. Because I'm very big on education as well. I'm always trying to learn new things and challenge myself. But like, as long as I was in school, they couldn't really tell me too much,
Mm,
because I'm still like, my major is psychology with track and law. So it's like, I can go to law school, or I
mhm,
can, work in clinical, or I can be a teacher or whatever. But at the end of the day, like, 99 or 98, and I'm not saying these stats are completely accurate, percent of the people in the world don't do what they love. They go to work every day to get a check, to live check
mhm,
to check, and be
mhm,
unhappy on top of all that. And I didn't want to live my life like that. Like, I want to do what makes me happy, regardless if there's tough times. There's times I hate. There's times I hate everybody in the music industry, whatever the case might be. But at the end of the day, like I said, I wouldn't change what I do for the world. Like,
right.
it doesn't. It's not work for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to reiterate that the passion has to be there. Don't do it for the optics. Don't do it because it's cool, because you're going to sink immediately, because there's a lot of hard work behind the scenes. So I just want to say that. And I love the fact that you talked about being set on it, because, we're always going to have naysayers, people that say, no, you can't do this, that, and the third. And ultimately, this is your life. You want to live it. So they're not going to live it for you. As long as you went to school, in your case, cool, but keep it moving.
Even if you don't,
Just
even if you don't go to school, it's like, still, like, it's all about your hustle. And I had hustle
yeah.
in me. Like, from high school, I was always just hustling. So like I said, I had no choice but to figure it out. I did things that I hated, that I didn't want to do, even in the beginning of me working at the music industry. It's not like that's what I essentially wanted to do, but I knew what my goal was at hand. So that's why I made sure I took advantage and maximized every opportunity that was presented in front of me. And through my matriculation of, coming up in the music industry, I made sure, like, when I met people, I built those relationships with them. So
Yeah,
yeah.
huge. And you talked about relationships, which is like, I mean, we keep saying it. I mean, people don't, I mean, it's nothing new, but a lot of people don't practice it. So
They don't even understand like the severity of what relationships are. Relationships are not meeting someone and the first time you meet them, hey, how can we make some money together? You might know someone for 5 years before you all cut a check with each other. And that's okay, because you all been building a organic relationship and you never know what it can lead to. Like, I have plenty of people that I haven't made money with. Doesn't mean they're not a value to me, or I'm not a value to them in another type of form. And it's about, checking in, not because you need something or you want to burst or you need to be put in contact with that person or this person. Like, just saying happy holidays, that goes a long way, because it's just, even if it's a general message you sent to 50 other people, it just shows you went out your way to check in with them and let them know, like, I hope you're having a great holiday. So I think that needs to be more defined than anything, just in general, when people have these different conversations, what building a genuine relationship looks like, a real relationship. And just to use an example, like, I'm not sure if you're familiar who Cam Kirk is, but he has a whole he's a huge photographer, but more than a photographer,
no.
has a gallery here in Atlanta. I actually went to college with him though. He went to
Dope.
Morehouse, I went to Spelman. And we recently just closed a deal together at Atlantic Records. I just did a label deal myself, and I'm the head of marketing. Her name's Marsha. We both just did a deal with him, and it started from, like I said, I knew him before he. Thank you. I
Congrats.
knew him before he even picked up a camera and started taking pictures. And like I said, his brand is so much more than that now. But we've been out of college since 2011, 2012, and it's like, I'd never done business with him before. And then our first deal is something huge like this, something that's never even happened at a label before. So
Crazy.
you just never know.
You never know. And I love the point that you were talking about earlier, like checking in. People don't realize this is a human based business. Like, you're dealing with people all day. You're not dealing with computers
Whew,
or
tell me
robots.
about it.
And to the relationships, it's like, people don't recognize, like, you could get a job in a situation, you can fill the job description, but that's all that you're going to do if you don't build genuine relationships with people, because you'll be pigeonholed in that role, because people won't recognize you for who you are, but just for the job. And people need to
Exactly.
focus on their brand, who they are, their character, how they treat people. you know, that goes full circle. You're like, wait, what did you do? Oh, I heard about you.
No, and people don't understand how small the music industry is. It's extremely, everyone is like a degree of separation apart. I mean, that's just in the world period, but definitely in the music industry. And I tell people as well, a lot, don't be so concerned just about networking up. Like, that's cool and all, but network across. And I would get on like my interns all the time back when I managed the studio. Like, you all sit here, let's say 3 out of 7 days with each other and barely know each other's names, don't know what each other want to do or what the goal is.
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck are y'all doing? You're not
Mm-hmm.
doing your job within itself. Fuck what you're supposed to be doing just within your internship, but you're not even maximizing on what you could, because you're so concerned about trying to look like you're the star or whoever at the internship, instead of understanding who's next to you. And you all could collab together, unite together, however you want to put it, and take the fuck over, do more than what your internship even is. But people are just so like, I don't know if it's like a intimidation thing. I don't know if it's well, I don't want to get too close to them. I don't want them to know what I'm doing, so they can try
Right.
to get ahead of me. I don't know what it is. It's the craziest thing, but you should definitely network across, just because you never know. Like, I ran into a few of my college friends the other day, and we're like, we need to start a group chat. Like, it's too many of us in Atlanta doing great things. And we literally came up together, from broke ass college students to just whatever we're doing now, in our
Yeah.
field. And it's like, we got to make more of an effort, like, to collab and support each other and things like that. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And I always tell people as well, you should treat the janitor just like you would treat the CEO,
Mm.
because you never know. And I've seen plenty of interns surpass people who they interned for.
Oof.
Plenty. Diddy and Andre Harrell. I use that example all the time. Like, Andre Harrell fired Diddy. Diddy turned around however many years later and hired Andre Harrell to lead his company. Rest in peace, Andre Harrell. But yeah, so it's just crazy. You just never
There it is.
know. And I feel like people don't really take the time to understand certain things. Like, you say you want to do something, but are you really understanding like what you're getting yourself into, and the overall aspect of how it works, not just in the music industry, that's in the corporate world as well.
Hmm.
So yeah, sorry,
Huge,
I know it's a little
huge.
long-winded, but yeah.
No, I mean, so many gems there. I mean, lessons learned. I mean, one, I think for a lot of young folks, like you said, networking across, this is a team-based business. We all working with each other. So you can't, there's no like one person that's gonna like take this artist to the next level. Everyone has a part. And you gotta look at like who has their strengths, play like your role, and we're gonna do this together. Like you do that really well, you do this. All right, cool. I'm gonna be the person that's gonna help organize all that. So figure that out because you know, the person that only thinks about themselves and what they're doing in their career, that doesn't translate well in any music environment because everyone's working in teams, you know. So
Exactly.
I just want to just say that. And then two, treating people with respect. I mean, for example, let's say you, as a young person, like you don't just say hi to the VP if you're going into the office. Like also the other interns, like say what's up, or even the janitor. To your point, like you just never know where the people are going to be in your life. And I think it's important to build as you come up because as you build as you come up, those your friends are going to be winning with you, and you can call in favors.
Hmm.
So
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
you know speaking of friends, we obviously connected through JR, so who's a really dope friend. And what was kind of like your connection working with him? I mean, I know JR has a really great story of like the way that he started out, from being on tour, then moving to Atlanta, and building his business. So like fast forward to like linking up with JR.
So I met JR, from, so after just a little backstory. After I worked with the management company, I stopped that, and then I got an internship working at a booking agency,
Oh, nice.
where I met tons of different people. It's called Music Group Booking Agency. I did that for about 2 years. Essentially, like I said, it's not what I wanted to do. It wasn't the goal of what I wanted to do, but I wanted to learn all facets of the music industry. I never wanted to be able to walk in a room or sit at a table and not be able to touch base on a particular topic. So, being that I still didn't know what I wanted to do, I'm like, oh, well, this is something interesting. It has to do with agreements. I said I wanted to become more privy in agreements, so this will work. I did that. It challenged me like no other, which is great. I learned a lot of lessons. I met a lot of people. I met um, Orlando McGee, who was Future's manager at the time, and Chubby,
Wow.
and Ray Daniels, who manages Rock City and works at Warner, and Rico Brooks, who was managing Metro Boomin. Just so many different people. And this was like 10 years ago, and I can still, call them my big bro and make the calls today, and they're going to pick up the phone and actually execute. So once again, that just goes into relationships. And after that, I was like, okay, I've been here almost 2 years. Like, this is not what I want to do, but I learned a lot of great things. I want to be more hands-on on the music side. So my Spelman sister had put on Facebook, like,
Mm.
looking for um, someone to replace what she was doing. She was working for Akon and Boo, who had a studio called Music Box. She was working the front desk. So I applied. I actually interviewed with Amber Grimes, which is so
Backgrounds.
crazy. Amber and I are such great friends. But yeah, she so we're in JR. It all just kind of comes together. But
Right.
yeah. So I interviewed with Amber and got the job, started off at the front desk. And I think JR was working for Boo at the time.
Yeah.
So that's how I met him. And I literally worked my way up while being inside Music Box with JR, Amber, Sigpen, Verse Simmons,
Wow.
K Camp,
K Camp. Yeah.
uh, K Camp, yeah, known him for years. Just Melon Moose, who's super great producers. Um, Blue and Coney, who are known as Nova Wave, who've written some of like the
Yes.
biggest hits. Yeah,
I love
like we
No Way.
all JR used to manage them. Like it's so crazy. Yeah. So yeah, that's how I met JR. And from there, we worked obviously with Boo for like a few years. And then he had stopped working with Boo. I think Amber had stopped working with Boo. And JR had created his own company and he signed an artist named Marissa. Shout out to Marissa. And he brought me to work on his team to do like day-to-day management for Marissa. So that's like our whole, and then he was just always my big brother. Like that's always a good friend of mine. So
I love that. And, it's great because you talk about all these people that are now doing incredible things individually, right? From Amber to like Nova Wave, Blue, and
K
obviously JR,
Camp,
K
Sixpence, yeah.
Cam, Sixpen, and you. Like, it's like,
Yep.
it's really great to see, how those kind of relationships have blossomed into like your own individual successes. And it's dope to see across
Absolutely.
the industry.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Um, so during this time, like for you, obviously you're discovering your kind of like your love and kind of like your place in music, in niche in music. Now you're, let's say, in this position with JR. Where did that kind of light bulb really like light up for you in regards to just, was it in the A&R role or opportunity, or was there like another job that did you do before you started like really to dabble in the A&R space?
So I was still working with Boo while I was working with JR as well. So for Boo, like I said, I was working my way up. So I started off as the front desk, and then I was assistant studio manager. Then I was Boo's executive assistant. Then I was overall studio manager. And then I was handling his franchises. They were
Right.
doing lighting in Africa, so I was assisting with that as well.
Wow.
Just everything he had going on, publishing side, on the publishing side, on the label side, I was just doing everything. He was also VP of Def Jam at that time, and managing Chris Brown too. So it was just a lot of different elements going
Wow.
on. But I wanted to do something outside of that, like something I had never done. Like I said, I'm always trying to challenge myself and learn new things that I can apply in life and my career. So when him and Amber had offered me the job to do day-to-day management, that was something I had never done before. So that was a great space for me to be in because I was able to learn so much just from being kind of thrown in the fire. And
Right.
from there, I did that for a couple years, and then I stopped. But like I said, I was still working with Boo, and I was also working with a company called Blue Alley Touring, which shout out to my guy Dre Davis. I was doing project management for him. So
Gotcha.
K Michelle, Jeremiah,
Wow.
Janae Aiko, so many different people. And it's so crazy that I even worked my way up to that with Dre because I forgot this part. But I started off making bank runs for K Michelle initially when I
What?
first started out with him, making bank runs. Yes. Yes.
What?
Scariest thing ever. Only because I'm like, he would give me like $100,000 in cash. And it's like, not to go deposit in the bank. I'm like, please don't let anything happen to me on the way to the bank because this is a lot of money in cash to deposit after the shows. So
They're like,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. I was like, please, me out of all people, something would happen. So, yeah, I started off making bank runs, and then I started doing project management for a lot of the artists. Then I started doing day-to-day management for K Michelle. And that kind of, yeah,
Wow.
I literally worked my way up. And then from there, I I started, oh, I heard Atlantic was looking to empower a woman, and my good friend, this is why relationships are important, uh, Gemini, who was Verse Simmons' engineer at Music Box with Boo, um,
Wow.
he started working at Mean Street Studios, and that's where Atlantic was based out of, still is. And he told me they were looking to empower women. He knew I was trying to find, the next career move, and I ended up getting the job, and Kim Michelle was signed to Atlantic as well, so I couldn't do both. But so I eventually stopped doing day-to-day management for her and became an A&R. Well, I started off as a consultant. I was probably a consultant for a few months, maybe like 4 or 5 months, and then they offered me a full-time position. And from there, I co-A&R'd A Boogie's very successful album, Hoodie Season. Had a Cardi B
Wow.
record come out called Press.
Wow.
Um, just so many. I worked on a few different projects. So yeah, that's like
Uh,
my matriculation.
man, what's incredible is that, and this is like an important lesson for the audience, that you worked so many roles, and I think it's important because you were learning so many parts of the music business, right? You talked about that assistant role first, right? You talked about working
Mm-hmm.
at that agency, and then you got
Mm-hmm.
that front desk role at Music Box. Then you become like, um, you know, working on different positions, whether it's like the day to day, executive assistant, and then you just keep on like learning these different things on various projects. And
Mm-hmm.
the point I'm making is like the experience that you're getting, because these are real world experiences that have to like be able to navigate, um, that you can't necessarily learn by just reading a book or just you know um, studying and saying that you fill the job description. um, and the fact, I love the fact too that even though you didn't necessarily know what you want initially, you were still testing things out. Like, you weren't just like, hey, I just want to just do this. And I think a lot of folks pigeonhole themselves where like, this is the only thing I want to know. And if I don't get it, that's it. It's like
Mm-hmm.
so many facets of the music
You
business.
got to broaden your. Yeah, absolutely,
Um, so I,
absolutely.
so I just want to just say that, which is super important. And the fact that everything came back full circle with you, right? Because you talk about your relationship with Music Box, and now that afforded you the opportunity to work at Atlantic, and it all everything you do may not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily grant you those opportunities at that moment, but because
Correct.
how you treat people, how you do work will come back later on. So
Absolutely, hands down. And I think a lot of people take that for granted, or they don't necessarily see the bigger picture. They're looking for that instant gratification, and it's not always going to be that, which is okay.
you talked about instant gratification. I feel like everyone, like I said, they just want the byproducts of like why we work. Some of the things that we work in music for, that we do get, right? We get to go to shows, we get to like hang out with some really amazing people who are artists, but there's so much that goes behind the scenes, and the relationships that you
So
talked about.
so many other things.
um,
Absolutely.
so we got to this point, to the present. Now you're the director of A&R. You talked about some of the projects you worked on, from A Boogie to like Cardi B. Just for the room, I mean, um, going back to your initial love of music, whether it's like the Spice Girls, and then listening to your parent, to your mom, listening to Biggie and Journey, to like, transitioning to like the first show that your grandma brought you to, you cut in class with your friends, going to like downtown to watch the indie bands, and watching music videos, which were you fell in love with, to going to school, right? Initially, you wanted to just study history, and you're like, no, this ain't it. And shout out to everyone from Spelman. I know some really dope people from Spelman. And then you pivoted to psychology, and during that time, you talked about like the assistant role that you were able to get. you know, how you're able to pivot from that to like other opportunities, working at the agency, to, you know, having the opportunity to work at Music Box with JR and people like Amber Grimes, like um, K Camp and, you know, Sick Pen and all them, Boo, and then other opportunities that really opened up for you. And fast forward, where everything came full circle to you working at Atlantic Records. And to say that is because, you know, nothing comes easy. Your journey in music has been really, you know, been your journey, and everyone's journey is so different. But you talked a lot about, you know, the relationships that you were able to build, your passion for music, because you talked about, you know, you even before you drive out, you have to listen to music, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and how super important is that. But with all the lessons we spoke about, what's more one more lesson learned just for the audience as we wrap up this episode that you can give, because there's so many gems that you shared earlier?
I would say number one, be truthful to yourself. I mean, I'm sorry, be true to yourself and don't compromise your morals more than anything, because it's easy to get caught up and think everything's glitter and gold. And this is just everyday life, not with just the music industry, but just in general. Make sure you maintain your integrity, because at the end of the day, just because something doesn't work out for you, one, as we said earlier, like, don't look at this as a fail, look at this as a lesson. And two, also look at it from the standpoint of, it, one door could be closing to open up another door. So it's okay if things don't work
Right.
out. It's okay if you don't work with this person anymore, or you might have been let go from something. It's okay. Don't beat yourself up over it. So
Yeah. No, huge. A couple things there. I think, not to get caught up, because it's easy to get caught up in this business, just from the limelight and then it's like the
hmm
lifestyle and so forth. And you talked about integrity, making sure you're true to yourself, because you have to also be self-aware about what's happening. Like, okay, is this me? Does this
yeah.
is this affecting my health or my emotions? Like, make sure you're good, because if you're not good, how could you perform at your best? I feel like that's something that, I've had to learn over time. I'm better at it now, but you know, you got to be true to yourself when it comes to stuff like this. And then, yeah, this I think, I just want to reiterate this again, just the relationships. Um, you know, going back to like why we even know each other. So shout out to JR again
Shout out
for
to
connecting
Jr.
us.
My guy.
And just want to reiterate that for the room, just because, what I really love about Atlanta culture is like the relationships that people have created there, and how that's blossomed to like the industry as a whole. And we see that from, you know, a lot of the different spaces of music I work in. So that's a testament to like what you guys have been able to cultivate, in Atlanta. So, just wanted to say that. But Sammye, thank you so much. I know you're busy tonight. You know,
Absolutely.
you've been incredible. And thank you for sharing your story, for also like a lot of the young women that are watching and are seeing you in a position where you've had to like really grind to get you to where you are today. But more importantly, you've done it from a space of passion, and love. And that's that's the thing I want people to walk away with. Like, make sure that that's the core of why you're doing what you're doing in music. Um, Make sure we're gonna have Sammy's information. Make sure you can connect with her. Like, comment, subscribe. Um, this is Drew DeLeon, Digilog fam. Thank you so much. Make sure to follow us on socials. Stay tuned for the next episode, episode 28. And can't wait to talk to you soon. Peace.